What is up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we're going to rank the discography of Motionless in White. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. So to be perfectly honest, this was a fan request, and at the time I had never listened to a full Motionless in White album and said as such, but the more I thought about it, there's only 5 albums, and I was kind of like, hey, what could go wrong, right? But yeah, I've listened to songs over the years, and I just thought I'd give it a go. So we're going to start off with Creatures in 2010. This is via Fearless Records. Again, only being familiar with some of their later material and some of the music videos I'd seen, I was pretty surprised at this first track to find out that they were just metalcore. This is just a straight up metalcore album. There are some like symphonic elements here and there. There's some kind of emo style singing, and it's pretty catchy. I gotta admit, y'all, I kind of like this one.
Unforgivable.
But yeah, it was coming out right around the time as What Separates Me From You from A Day to Remember, and I love that album. So I think if I had discovered this at the same time, I probably would have listened to it a lot. Other things that come to mind too, like The Plot in You, and definitely Bleeding Through, and we'll get into that in in a bit. This one's also not quite as edgy or corny as I anticipated. It definitely has its moments, like on London in Terror and the title track. But really, what group in this style doesn't? Like, you pick a metalcore band out of a hat, and they're going to have their edgier moments. They also didn't quite have the full-on scene look that they do now. It's already heading in that direction, but less of a turn-off there. But yeah, pretty similar to stuff I was listening all through high school and college, and it's honestly kind of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and put this at A tier. It's not like S tier or anything. There are plenty of other bands doing this same style better and more efficiently, more effectively, but overall I would jam to this album, and I kind of want to listen to it again. Moving on, we've got Infamous in 2012, also via Fearless Records. This one starts off very similar, has even more of a Bleeding Through flair to it in the opening track. It also has less of the kind of emo singing moments, definitely a heavier album overall, I would say, in some ways. But then when you get to Devil's Night, which is one of the big singles, you get the more industrial influences at that point, and that becomes a big point of their trajectory from here on out. Tracks like America, The Divine Infection, Hatefuck, and Infamous just go full Marilyn Manson. I gotta say, I'm not as into them doing that style, but it's not terrible, and there are actually some pretty fun moments with it. Also, Bjorn Strid of Soilwork actually sings on Puppets 2, which is pretty cool. Ends up being an interesting collaboration. And then speaking of Bleeding Through, Brandon Schiapati of Bleeding Through is on If It's Dead, We'll Kill It, and it's kind of funny though, because you barely notice that he's there, because their vocals, their harsh vocals are very similar. And also, Mick Kenny, also of Anal Nathrak, also wrote on the opening track, which again very much sounds like Bleeding Through, and guess what? Mick Kenny has written for Bleeding Through as well. You also have members of Combi Christ and Vampires Everywhere on this album. This is the beginning of a lot of guest features from here on out. And honestly, I was kind of waiting to start hating, to rhyme that out. But honestly, it's still not bad. I would give this album a B tier. And I don't blame people who rank this one higher, too. I've had a couple people say this is their favorite one. And that also goes for the next album. Crawling from hell, falling from grace. So in 2014... we get Reincarnate. This was definitely a very popular one. I was also noticing that these albums continue to just chart higher and higher with each one and be reviewed pretty well. So leaning even further into the industrial rock influences at this point and the Marilyn Manson elements, I, again, was still kind of waiting to hate it, but it's decent. It's decent. I was entertained and not really having a rough time. I'm definitely kind of liking each one less as it goes along. But yeah, it's still a good time. The opener on this one, just straight up, it's just orgy. Like, this is just an orgy track, if y'all remember them. I definitely had their big album. This one's also gentler with the guitars. The clean singing has made a shift on this one where it's no longer that emo style. Now it's straight up Breaking Benjamin. In fact, one of the songs, in fact, I think I'll use the clip of it to open this album, just sounds like that. I will not bow. I will not break. Like it almost sounds like the same thing. So it's hard for me to not think of that song when I'm listening to their song. More guest features on this one. We've got Danny Filth of Cradle of Filth, and I gotta say his track is pretty entertaining. You also have Maria Brink of In This Moment. Wasn't a big fan of their collaboration. She tends to be really corny and cringy. And then Tim Scold of KMFDM and Manson makes an appearance as well. Break the Cycle, pretty catchy, pretty solid track. One of the standouts, definitely. Generation Lost is kind of like a more dancey Linkin Park is the way I would put it. The edginess meter is definitely rising at this point, from the artwork to the song titles to the lyrics. Dead as Fuck in particular. This is just like a cornier version of Manson. Was not a big fan of this track. Anytime you spell in a song, it's almost always cringe. But I gotta say, if most of these songs came on the radio, I wouldn't change the station. I'd probably jam along, maybe even sing along a little bit too. I'm gonna put this album at C. Oh boy. Then we get Graveyard Shift in 2017, now on Roadrunner Records at this point. The electronica intro on this one, on Rats, is pretty cool. Like, that song came on, and I was like, ooh, I like this. This is neat. But then again, it turns into just straight up orgy after that. Once the vocals kick in, you kind of lose me a little bit. Overall, I gotta say that this style that they are moving into, Three Teeth does it heavier and better, in my opinion. So if you want a more kind of underground group that is really killing it with this industrial rock, Manson-esque kind of Rob Zombie style, then check out Three Teeth. Queen for Queen is super corny. Those lyrics are awful, and this song just sounds so generic to me. Not digging that one. They do actually have Jonathan Davis of Korn on Necessary Evil, but even having him can't save it from, again, massive cringe on this one. The chorus is a play on the whole "It's my party and I'll cry if I want to," except replace cry with die. Yeah, I know. This album also reminded me a lot when I was listening to it of the trajectory that Dope took. I don't know if you guys can remember Dope. Just throwing out all those gems right now. The phrase that kept coming to mind for me too was music to get you laid by scene girls. And the music videos just scream of that too. In fact, the latter is the type of song that really comes back to haunt someone after being canceled. I have a feeling this is when I started hearing some of their songs and seeing some of their music videos, because this is what I judged them on previously. When people brought up Motionless In White, this is what my mind went to. Yeah, not a big fan of this. Pretty embarrassing, honestly. The single Loud is kind of fun, but overall, I gotta give this thing a D.
So thank God that's over. I mean, it's over, right? There's not more, right? I mean...
Alright, last one here. We've got Disguise in 2019, also via Roadrunner Records. This one has the worst opener out of all of them. That's something I will say. Every single album up to this point, if nothing else, had a really great way to open up the album. This one sucks. And yeah, at this point with this album, there is no personality left. It is just copy, paste, repeat at this point. It's again kind of like a worse version of Linkin Park. Just feels like very heavily recycled new metal, almost like it came out of a box off of an assembly line. And I noticed too, so it seems like even the fans felt that a little bit too, because this is the first album where they started to get some more mixed reviews. Pretty much everything else up to this point had relatively positive Metacritic rankings, and not this one. People picked up that this one felt phoned in, or whatever you want to call it. I honestly could not find a single redeeming quality to talk about on this album. I think the one song that was okay, I guess, was Undead Ahead 2. But other than that, this is just a wasteland. This is just... This was the one album I would say where I legitimately felt like I wasted my time listening to it. The other four, I felt like, people kind of made jokes too when I said I was going to do this, that think about all the other things you could be doing. Those other four didn't make me feel like I should have been doing something else and that I truly wasted my time. But this fifth one, if I could get that time back, I definitely would. I'm going to put this one at F tier. So yeah, those are my Motionless in White rankings. I mean, it's the first time actually out of all the tier lists I've done where it's just gone straight down. I went into this expecting to just kind of get a laugh, but honestly, it's actually kind of depressing just to see this band sort of nosedive in a single sitting, listening through their albums in order like that. I'm sure there's a huge audience for their current sound and, get that money. Good for them. Whatever the reason is that they're doing it, whether they just prefer that sound or, it's more viable, whatever. They can do them. It's not for me. So I'm just more excited by bands that are better at marrying these elements with better performances and songwriting. And again, they're out there. Like, trust me, there are bands that are doing this kind of Motionless in White thing that I've come across that I think are doing it infinitely better. And again, the biggest one that comes to mind is Three Teeth. I actually have an interview on the channel with Three Teeth. I have a couple reviews on metaltrenches.com. You should check out their albums. If there was one group coming out of this that I would shout out, then that would be the one. But yeah, let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Don't get mad. Like, there's just too much going on in the world to get mad about one man's opinion about a band that maybe you like and feel like you should rank them more. Instead of getting mad, just share your ranking. Tell us why you like each album. For the albums that I disliked that you really enjoy, tell me why. Let's have a conversation about it. I really enjoy doing that. I'm not here to just kind of slap people down and make them feel bad about the music that they listen to. You love what you love. I always tell people never be embarrassed about the things you enjoy. And then stick around, I got plenty more videos coming right after this one. I have a whole playlist of these tier lists, but also full album reviews, interviews with bands on the podcast, you name it, we've got it. So plenty of reasons to subscribe if you've not already. You can also chat with us on Discord and support on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.